Happy birthday, America! Today, the United States turns 249 years old, and what a journey in life it has been for one of the youngest yet wealthiest, most powerful, and influential nations ever. Like many Americans, I am thinking about the history of the American world empire and our rise and fall to China. Much like our predecessor, the British Empire, the rise of the U.S. empire's wealth and power began with expansionism and colonialism. The Age of Manifest Destiny involved massive land gains through brutal genocide of the Native Americans, among others. This actually did inspire Adolf Hitler's land gain by gassing 6 million Jews, though America used smallpox. From that time on, the new nation began to develop an identity of freedom, democracy, and opportunity. A young nation, though prospering, also became a more divided nation. Many ancient empires, like the Babylonians, Egyptians, and the Ottomans, profited greatly from slave labor, as did the American Empire. This race-based slavery still continues today through one of the world's highest mass incarceration rates. America would remain divided while continuing to prosper with modernization, innovation, and advancement in technology. The U.S. quickly became the most desired place for European immigration, with an abundance of talented labor coming in. In 1819, the U.S. joined the British Empire for the illegal smuggling of opium to what was, at that time, the wealthiest and most culturized country in the world, China. This didn't just make a few Americans wealthy, like Warren Delano, the grandfather of FDR, but rather America as a nation prospered from it as well. The fortune made off getting over 10 million Chinese addicted to opium during much of the 19th century helped fund America's Industrial Revolution, the first 5 transcontinental railroads, also built by the Chinese, and some of the first colleges and universities. China's century of humiliation would later result in the lethal and murderous vengeance via a synthetic derivative of opium. Meanwhile, there would be a civil war over slavery, or white Southerners denying others their states' rights through slavery. Later, the 20th century would see the new American empire lead the world through the First World War. During this war, the U.S. empire overtook the British Empire as the world's top-ranked economy. It was the original American oligarchs who would control this historic economic growth at the expense of the overworked and underpaid workers. That was then followed by the Great Economic Depression, and as a result, the globally connected world's dislike for American capitalism. The America First approach with tariffs only made it worse, while also pissing off the entire world by dragging them down with us. Sounds familiar. But then came the Second World War, which would bring America and China together for the first time to fight against a common enemy. The U.S. empire fought the Japanese empire for 4 years, resulting in the deaths of over 111,000 Americans. China fought Japan for 14 years, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 20 million Chinese. It is also estimated that over 250,000 of those Chinese civilians, tortured, raped, and slaughtered, was in retaliation for helping save 64 U.S. Navy pilots from being captured after bombing Tokyo. It was also during World War II that the U.S. repealed the 61-year-old legislation banning Chinese immigration. China has since again become adversaries to the West in a new Cold War, in large part to their greater economic success and propaganda from the U.S. That propaganda was more evident earlier this year, despite U.S. media from China showing a completely different narrative. Yet it was Americans who were awakened to the fact that they were the ones being brainwashed, living in a bubble of propaganda. Like with the collapse of the Roman Empire due to some part with wealth inequality, American capitalism is likely even worse. The U.S. has more than ever become an extreme oligarchy and plutocracy, at again the expense of the American worker. China's economic rise overtook the U.S., turning one of the poorest economies in the world into the wealthiest.
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
While lifting over 850 million of its citizens out of poverty in just a few decades. Contrary to what Western media says, this unprecedented economic growth wasn't all because of free market capitalism. It was more of a result of practical socialism, great leadership from the Communist Party of China, and the amazing collective will of the Chinese people. The CPC has led with foresight and enormous fortune in land value. They provide competitively based subsidies and price controls, which is part of how 90% of Chinese can afford a home. It is also how China has conquered the global automotive industry, making EVs with better technology than Tesla at a much cheaper price. Yeah, who's laughing? China also managed to turn countries as their major trading partner against the U.S. The major reason for this was the Belt and Road Initiative, a modern-day remake of the ancient Chinese Silk Road, or a network of land and maritime trade routes connecting China throughout the world. It includes thousands of much-needed infrastructure projects. The Chinese have mastered construction, able to build anything that any country needs, but was always difficult due to U.S. corporations' greed for large profits and desire to keep countries in the global south poor. China can build at a fraction of the price for no profit or even at a loss, since these are state-run companies not seeking massive profits, but rather geopolitical advantage. That includes low-income housing, schools, and hospitals. Those evil Chinese. China can also provide much more favorable financing to developing countries so they no longer have to rely on IMF loans, which many countries have testified to be the real debt traps, including neoliberal conditions designed to cause more harm to their economies. Instead of Western propaganda and hypocrisy, Americans should listen to those in Global South countries reminding Global North countries that they fully understand what is colonialism and imperialism, as China's BRI is none of those. Most of those in the Global South like the concept of mutual win-win collaboration with the Chinese, as opposed to mutual win-lose competition with the Americans, which is never done on equal terms. Speaking of which, they also like how the Chinese treat them as equals, while not hypocritically interfering with their domestic affairs. Also, BRICS will continue to be the greatest strategy to bring down the American empire and essentially the current world order. This is a major game changer as they are kicking the asses of the fascist G7 countries. Members of BRICS will continue to do away with the US dollar by using their own currency or possibly a new currency in the future of global trade. This stops one country, the U.S., from always enjoying exorbitant privilege while other countries' currencies are weakened. Now, countries only within BRICS are finally able to engage in fair trade, free from the weaponization of the U.S. dollar. On January 1st of 2024, 5 new countries joined BRICS, and on January 1st of 2025, 9 new countries joined BRICS. There will likely be more come January 1st, 2026. There are currently 20 countries now members or partners of BRICS Plus, representing 57% of the world population and 44% of the world GDP. The American world empire was unlike all other empires for its eventual control or influence over every country in the world. That is, except only North Korea, thanks to China's support. Still, no other empire has dominated as much of the globe as America has. Perhaps that is why it couldn't last that long, around just 1 century. That is a very short time in world history compared to the Greek Empire lasting over 6 centuries. Of course, maintaining an empire can be more challenging than conquering one. This is the third major rival's economy the U.S. has tried to destroy. America first did so against the Soviet Union, and eventually were successful in 1991. America did so also in the 1985 Plaza Accord against Japan, since they were becoming too successful with a massive trade surplus to the U.S. Sounds familiar? As a result, Japan's economy still hasn't completely recovered more than 3 decades later. Despite America's efforts, it was too late, preoccupied with costly, unjust wars, and completely unable to stop China. History will not be kind to the U.S. empire. America has used Joseph Goebbels' level of unprecedented propaganda through public school textbooks, worldwide media, and by creating the UN, USA, World Bank, IMF, and more. Through these fraudulent organizations, America tried brainwashing the entire world into believing that colonialism, Nazism, fascism, and imperialism were over and a better, more equitable world was being created. Instead, the U.S. empire became the Fourth Reich, while hypocritically proclaiming to be a shining city upon a hill. This even after nearly 500 military interventions, murdering millions of civilians, countless crimes against humanity, and leaving behind economic destruction everywhere. This even after nearly a century of keeping African countries in poverty by not allowing the value-added industries of their abundant rare minerals and natural resources. Thank God for China, ushering in a new multipolar world order that resembles that of the ancient Chinese Silk Road, one that doesn't involve hundreds of military bases around the world. Taiwan is not a friend to the U.S., but rather a pawn, being used to fight our war, just like Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Ukraine. China's quest isn't to be an empire, but rather to make China great again, as they were prior to their century of humiliation. That includes learning from their mistakes by having a powerful military to ensure no further centuries of humiliation from Russia, Japan, and the West. Because unlike Americans, the Chinese have actually learned their history, along with even U.S. history, and they don't forget. In conclusion, this is a war between good and evil. The American empire represented a century of global hegemony like never before. America has certainly had their many great achievements for humanity. American capitalism has also suppressed many of those great achievements and created more than just economic disasters. Despite the failed social experiment, the U.S. has always been more powerful as a melting pot of immigrants. Contrary to Christian nationalism, America is obviously not exceptional to other countries, as the myth of American exceptionalism is founded on white supremacy and stupidity.
My whole life, I believed that America was number one. That was the saying. Not America's number two. England is number two. China should be like 8.
And yet, despite all this privilege gained, America's greed, racism, and arrogance ultimately led to their downfall. Because of BRICS, the US dollar will continue to decline as Americans could possibly experience another economic depression and reset. Meanwhile, countries once colonized have since surpassed their colonizer, as the 21st century has thus far belonged to Asian countries. Countries in Africa continue to provide inspiration and empowerment to other Global South countries by expelling the West from their countries, while the United States continues to resist this movement. The sore losers in the U.S. government may rely more on military power while it lasts, along with other forms of power, so America shouldn't be completely forgotten. Though every empire that has risen has also fallen, the U.S. empire is trying to become the first to rise again like the Antichrist by repeating their history.